Hi, I'm Darlene Carman, and welcome to the show. When people travel, museums are major attractions to visit. Why is it that people visit distant museums and overlook the ones nearby? Recently, I visited a new museum with a lot of heart. Laura Babcock, director, and past president Jim Reynolds from the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum will tell us about the historical significance of the museum. We'll also share a short video of the museum when I visited. Hi, nice to see you guys again.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Now, the museum showcases a lot of the influences that define the Sunnyvale history, but the major draw is the Murphy family. So please tell us some about the settlers and why they are so important to Santa Clara Valley.
I think the Murphy family, the entire clan, the entire family is very important to actually the settling of the entire state of California, and certainly the Bay Area, on it being part of that first successful wagon train, on it purchasing land. We always say Martin Murphy was a international person himself because, of course, he immigrated from Ireland, was an Irish citizen, to Canada, became a Canadian citizen, purchased land, then later to Missouri, so he was a U.S. citizen. And then when he came across the Sierras to purchase land in what is now Sunnyvale, it was Mexico, and so he became a Mexican citizen in order to purchase land when he arrived. He purchased 5,000 acres from Castro upon his arrival in the 1840s. But that family went on to become super leaders in the entire Bay Area. Mayors of San Jose, state senators, state assembly people. They were so respected that when Martin Murphy died, all businesses and government buildings were actually closed for his funeral. Wow. Out of respect to this man. So they're very influential.
Well, they had so many members in their family, senior, junior, and now, do you know why they left Ireland? You know, a little history on that, why they left Ireland?
Well, they basically left Ireland for religious and education freedom. They were not part of the poor and starving. This is way before the potato famine, etc. They had money. They came with money. But education freedom in those days, Catholics could not go to school. Children could not go to school. It was only Protestant in the national religion, and then, of course, the national schools on it. And they always felt like they were persecuted over there. And so they had dreamed of moving to North America for religious and education freedom.
So Canada, and it was horrible conditions wherever, it seems like wherever they went, and malaria and all kinds of things that went on. Yeah. Yes. But when they came here, the whole family, there were so many of them, and they owned a lot of property everywhere. So we're talking about Sunnyvale, San Jose, Marin.
Certainly Mountain View, and as Laura's pointed out, the Purisma Ranch in Los Altos Hills, which has become Los Altos Hills now, was a gift from Martin Murphy to his youngest daughter, Elizabeth, upon her wedding. So she received Los Altos as a wedding gift.
So lots and lots of property. Yep. And they helped bring the railroads here.
Yes.
Lawrence Station.
The first railroad from San Jose to San Francisco, and come out through Murphy Land, and in exchange, Murphy asked for 2 depots, 2 stops. And that was Lawrence Station as well as what is now downtown Sunnyvale.
And it was like in their backyard. How
yes.
convenient is that? You know?
Yes.
It shows a change in timing, however, because the Murphys used to sit on the front porch of their place and look at the San Francisco Bay. When the trains went through, they started sitting on the back porch and watching the trains go by. And not
yes.
too many people want to do that these days. But that was a big deal back then to have that railroad going by.
So just, you know, from my reading, I would say that Martin Jr. was probably, I mean, his father, of course, started the whole thing, but Martin Jr., he was like, I would say, the most influential of the Murphys. Is that, would you say?
Well, certainly in Sunnyvale, because he purchased, it said 5,000 acres, which pretty much incorporated the entire area. His father purchased a ranch more down around Morgan Hill, which is why San Martin is named San Martin.
Martin Murphy.
For Martin Sr. Yeah. On it. And then, of course, Sunnyvale, as you probably recognize, an awful lot of Murphy names throughout the entire city of Sunnyvale in streets.
Yes.
Of Maud, Matilda, Mary, Evelyn, Martin, Tafe, Arquez,
all Murphy granddaughters.
Polk.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And of course, Sunnyvale wasn't called Sunnyvale back then.
No, it was called Murphy Station.
Murphy Station.
And all towns start around a depot. That's where their downtown, their beginnings are on it. So yeah, it was started as Murphy Station.
But when they went to incorporate by Murphy Station, they discovered that the town of Murphys, perhaps you've heard of that up on Highway 4 on the way to Bear Valley and Calaveras Big Trees, was already using the name Murphys, and that was two of Martin's brothers, John and Daniel, had gold mined up there and started a mercantile up there. And so they had already used the name Murphy Station.
So when they came to California, about 1844, were they the first wagon train to cross over the Sierra Nevada mountains? Were they the first?
Indeed. They were indeed. They started from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and they were following a trail known as the Oregon Trail at that time. And they came to around about Pocatello, Idaho, whereupon 11 wagons from the Stevens, Townsend, Murphy party headed off into terra incognito. They were headed for California. They didn't quite know how they were going to get there. And so they actually were following the Humboldt River. If you've ever been over to Wells, Nevada, the Humboldt River follows Highway 80 all the way through there. And they were thinking, we're going downhill toward the ocean, we're on a river, what could possibly go wrong? What went wrong was the fact that the Humboldt River disappears in the Humboldt Sink right around Lovelock, Nevada. And they were searching around trying to figure out what they were going to do next. And they came back, sent out a searching party, came back with a Paiute Indian chief who greeted them in the Paiute Indian language using a word that sounded like Truckee. Perhaps you have heard of Truckee, California, and so forth. So it turned out for thousands of years, the Native Americans had been crossing the Sierra Nevada to do trading and drive cattle across and so forth. So Truckee knew how to guide them to that spot, and he was responsible for getting them up to the top of what we know now as Donner Lake and then through Donner Pass, old Highway 40 in that region.
But the wagons, how many wagons did we have?
Well, they had
20,
11 wagons,
11.
And it was November. The snow was coming down. They were fighting for their lives, literally, and they were able to get 5 wagons across, and the other 6 wagons were located at the top of Donner Lake. A man named Moses Schellenberger, one of the party, remained there, and they built a cabin there for Moses during the winter. And so he was rescued there in 1845 early, and they left the cabin behind, and that was the very cabin that the Donner Party found when they actually got stranded at the top.
Oh, now you mentioned the Donner Party.
Yeah.
Maybe we should recap a little bit who the Donner people were, because maybe somebody doesn't know out there watching. The Donner people came.
Well, as you know, the Donner Party, most people know that the Donner, we know anyway, that the Donner Party came in 1846, 2 years after the Murphy, Stevens, Townsend, Murphy Party. And they are very famous. Yes. Nobody has ever heard of the Stevens, Townsend, Murphy Party. In our museum, we show a 6-minute preview of a PBS broadcast that we sell in the gift shop, but that is a broadcast that discusses the Stevens, Townsend, Murphy Party. Coincidentally, the Donner Party, as you know, lost some high percentage of their people to death.
Yes.
And
we're not going to say how.
What we like to say in the museum is the Murphy Party left Council Bluffs, Iowa with 50 people. They arrived in California with 52 people, and that meant that 2 of those women knew they were going to have to give birth along the trail. It was just what you did. That's the way life went on. And,
they need their own movie. I mean,
they do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have that in our PBS broadcast. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I love the story about Elizabeth Yuba Murphy.
Yeah.
So how did she get her nickname?
Well, it's obviously not an Irish name. It's a Spanish name, and she got her name because of this. They crossed the top of the Sierra Nevada, and they were headed down on the western slope. And right about a place, if you're driving on Highway 80 up to Lake Tahoe, you will see an exit called Big Bend. Mm-hmm. Right at that exit, if you go over to the Yuba River, you'll find a plaque. And that plaque shows where Elizabeth Yuba Murphy was born. They formed a party of about 6 or 8 people, I guess, that stayed behind and formed a community around her in the snow camping, to give birth to this child. And they were rescued, and and a couple of months later, when the Martin Murphy came up from the valley and picked them all up, and at that time, the mother, Elizabeth, the mother, Mary Bolger Murphy, was holding this little baby in her arms. The horse stumbled. The kid went into the Yuba River. They pulled her out and dried her off and gave her the middle name of Yuba, which is why we talk about that story.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, that's quite a story.
Yeah.
And, well, all of their lives are fascinating, but, for the limit of time, we can't go into. She's got more to her story. She was an interesting person.
She was.
But we actually have some video now that we'd like to watch, and then while we're watching that, you can tell us what people are going to see as they're watching the video when they go to visit the museum. So let's see the video.
The museum is actually located on the property of the Sunnyvale Community Center. And as you're coming into the entrance of it, the Historical Society moved an old turn-of-the-century little orchard barn, which you're seeing behind the tree there, for the use of taking care of the orchard that's on the property.
And I have to say, it's one of the most serene places in all of Sunnyvale. It is. You come out of the hustle bustle of driving around, and you sit in that orchard and look at that beautiful museum. It is just very, very quiet.
And now you'll see the museum. It's 8,500 square feet, and we built what we say a near replica of the original Murphy House. The original Murphy House, of course, was the first wood frame structure in all of the Bay Area, prefabbed in Maine, on the East Coast, shipped around the Horn, put together here with leather straps and wooden pegs. And unfortunately, it lost its life in 1961 when the state and the county wanted Central Expressway put in there, and so the house was bulldozed.
This is our beautiful entryway. You can see all kinds of very nice woodwork in there, and then our
Really
displays
nice.
are in the background. This is the Murphy family, and we have Martin Murphy down below, and we have Martin Murphy Jr. up above, and that's his family. And those children of his are the ones that produced, for instance, Elizabeth on the left produced Mary and Matilda, the names of Sunnyvale streets and so forth. This is kind of what the way we show the trip out west, and this is following the Oregon Trail, and it continues up till right about where the party splits off and heads off themselves down Highway 80 and towards California. And we have some really interesting views of what crossing the Sierra was like and what the rest of the trip was like. This is a small monitor where we show a 6-minute preview of that PBS broadcast I was telling you about.
And the oil paintings are Martin Jr. on the left and Martin Sr. on the right. Those are original Andrew P. Hill oil paintings that were in the house, that were commissioned by the family during that time. And now entering into the parlor and dining room area, candelabra, tables. Like I said, the paintings out in there is of Patrick Murphy, if I remember correctly. The beautiful square grand piano that's coming up, and two of the daughters. The photograph on the right is Elizabeth Yuba Murphy.
There she is.
Right.
She's famous.
Yeah.
She is very famous now, or certainly amongst
Falling into
Sunnyvale
the
history.
water.
Sunnyvale history. But all of these items were rescued from the original house before it was bulldozed. There had been some small vandals, fires lit into it.
We have a great collection of Murphy family pictures that they donated these pictures. It's like the family wall in each of our houses, and they're all there with ancient Murphy people, and they've all been captioned on the right-hand side. The piano itself was built in 1869, so we don't know whether it came around the Horn or whether on the newly opened railroad that had just opened in 1869.
And of course, you play the piano. That's very nice.
Yes, it's restored and working order.
Plays beautifully.
And this again is all original to the Murphy house. Is the paintings of Martin Murphy the third and the other son of the other one. This is an interesting small artifact that's actually sort of like a report card from first graduating class of Sisters of Notre Dame. They got little medals for a necklace instead of a gold star like our children or grandchildren get these days. And the period kitchen in the Welsh cabinetry that was made by one of the Murphy descendants on it. And as you pan around, you'll see the stove that came from the Joshua Hindi house. And the Murphy bedroom. Murphy, as we said, was very religious. He moved here for religion, education, freedom. And he had one bedroom set aside in his house strictly for Bishop Elamenes. He rode his horse from the mission in Monterey to the mission in San Francisco. And that is the bishop's bedroom set.
So we show here a little display about the canneries. The canneries were very fundamental in Sunnyvale history. There was the major industry from about 1890, about 1940. And we show a little description of the Walter Wilson walnut ranch. He raised huge walnut shells that were used to ship Neiman Marcus silk gloves in, and various other artifacts, an old gas pump, and this is kind of man stuff down here with straight razors and tobacco and all the stuff that guys used back then.
And then the early incorporation of the city. The large photograph is actually taken on the Incorporation Day in April. And then comes a model of the first railroad, downtown railroad. And the first buildings that were around the large building is the Del Monte historic building, which now is on Murphy Street. They moved it, but it was right on Evelyn and them.
Whoever knew that chicken incubators were built in Sunnyvale by the hundreds of thousands and shipped all over the world?
Yes.
This guy, Arthur Bessie, had a patent, and he put the boiler out in the field and so forth, and so he had this patent and shipped them all over the place. This is a great display on Moffett Field, which we is partly on Sunnyvale property. It describes a technique that the U.S. government decided they wanted to do in early 1930 to surveil the West Coast. And what they did was to have that giant dirigible, a crew of 75 inside, and they would launch these tiny little Sparrowhawk airplanes, which would fly their mission up and down, and then they would come and land. And if you look closely, you'll see a little hook on top of that airplane and a trapeze below. There it is. Landing meant hooking that hook on that trapeze, being pulled up inside, and then refueled and a new crew, and out they go. So it was basically an airborne aircraft carrier.
And now we're into what we call the mural room. It's a timeline of Sunnyvale done in mural form. At the Ohlone Indian, the first mission, Santa Clara, Martin Murphy arriving with all of his wheat fields. Murphy donating the first land for the railroad from San Jose to San Francisco. Early downtown, all four of those buildings still stand on Washington and Murphy. Then the first two large-scale industries both arrive in 1906 following the 1906 earthquake, and that's Libby's and Hendy.
This is a view that just takes my breath away. I'll tell you, I look at that and I think that's what our beautiful valley looked like from 1890 about 1940. And you just cannot stop looking at it. And then we get into Moffett Field time frame when in the 1930s. And finally, tick-tock, tick-tock, we come forward to these tiny little lots that we have in Sunnyvale right now.
And this is the history of Lockheed. Lockheed and, of course, Hendy and Westinghouse, which is now north of Grumman, were very, very high profile companies in Sunnyvale and some of the largest employers. And Lockheed, you can say, is either credited or blamed, depending upon your point of view, for the massive change from agricultural into industry.
This is a tech wall we have upstairs that kind of honors the technology that developed in our valley. And it is an unfinished project because we stopped it at 2010. But what we have is categories such as avionics, computation, computers, and other topics. And we have a timeline that goes across the top. And these little pocket displays show Palm Pilots and wafers and all the things that were developed here that you know, made our valley what it is today, which is
many of those have videos in for details as well.
This is also your event room. You have a lot of things going on in there. We'll talk a little bit about that later.
And this is a room that was set aside strictly for rotating exhibits. And so everything that's in this room is totally changed out every 3 to 4 months throughout the year. Now you're downstairs into the famous gift shop, as we would like to say.
All good tours end in the gift shop, right?
Absolutely.
The best and most unique gift shop that you'll find in museums.
Yeah.
Well, it's full of goodies.
Yes.
It definitely is. I really enjoyed this book that I read, Martin Murphy Family Saga by Marjorie Pierce. It's very, very detailed. We couldn't possibly cover all of the information about the family, but you have a lot of fine books in there besides that one. And then also, I found this necklace, so I was very happy to find this on my first time there. So we had to go fast, I know. Is there anything you wanted to elaborate on the video that went by so fast? Is there something else you'd like to say about it?
I'll tell you one thing about the museum I'd like to elaborate on.
Sure.
And that is that I'm a newcomer to the museum. I was recruited as a docent in 2008, the day that that beautiful building opened. People like Laura have been with the Historical Society for years and years and years. But as a newcomer, I came in, and what I discovered is that it's an all-volunteer organization. The people are there because they want to be there, and it is a marvelous place to work. There's no agendas, no nothing. People are in there fascinated by, drawn by history, drawn by friendship with one another, and drawn because they want to be there. And it's a wonderful place to be. And you can sense that the minute you walk in the door. I believe you may
Yes.
have. And,
well, that's why I said it has a lot of heart. I sense that right away.
Yes.
Now, one of the events, you have a lot of things going on in that event room, which also have the timeline, but something's very popular is your formal Victorian tea. So what do you have for your subject coming up, your theme, and when is it?
The spring tea is vintage brides and their attendants. And the teas, we hold them twice a year, and the Christmas time is always a Victorian tea. And this spring one will also include a fashion show of 100-year-old brides and their attendants, and mother of the groom and mother of the bride, etc. And we've had themed ones in the spring, other times too. We've done presidential wives, where we did an introduction and a fashion show. And in character of the president's wives, we did another one. When the butcher's family sold their land, their family, for some reason, actually kept their articles of clothing, or at least their favorite ones, or the high-end ones, over a period of 100 years. And we did a fashion show of just
But this one coming up, this is April...
It's April 29 and 30.
So it's 2 days. People only go to one day, right? Because you have so many people, you have to, right?
Yes.
And it's a fundraiser, and people can check the website for details.
Yes.
But it's just where you get to dress up, and I saw pictures of the food items, and quite nice. I wonder, you know, it's probably catered from...
That's one of the benefits of hosting a tea in a museum. You actually do drink your tea out of an antique porcelain teacup, and you stir it with an antique real silver spoon. Yes.
Very nice.
Having tea in a museum. And it's just a lovely, lovely setting. And of course, the room just takes 2 different decorations throughout the
I've heard
seasons,
good things
too.
about this. Also, you have, well, let's see, you've got the school program. So how many children are you expecting for that this year?
I believe it's pretty close to 2,000, isn't it, that she does
something
each
like
year?
that, 15
And the
to
children
20,000.
in
Yes.
Cupertino
Third grade
and
students, it's offered to all third grade classes in
schools.
school district, local school district.
They start out with Sunnyvale, including all the private ones and parochial ones, and even homeschool kids. But it's geared toward third grade, doing local history, and then they open it up. So we do have some from Cupertino and Mountain
These kids
View.
come in and they actually wash clothes on a washboard. They pump water into the thing. They run it through a wringer. They hang them on a line, and they beat rugs, and they actually go upstairs and they put on school clothes. We have some little tiny school desks that they sit at. And the teachers, you know, the ex-teachers that run that thing are just marvelous. They know how to handle these kids. They get them from this to this to this, and the kids just love it. And more often than not, a kid will come. And one of the things they hear is the story about Elizabeth Yuba Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
And these kids will come back with their parents, and here I'm a docent trying to show them the thing. And the kid says, "Get out of here." This is
I know the story.
Yuba Murphy, this is how, I know this story, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, very, very popular. Well, let's see, you've got so many events. There's another one that I thought was interesting, the Antique Fair. Where do you get your artifacts?
Well, the Antique Fair, we actually advertise it in the newspaper, newsletter, radio, etc. on it, and it's all individual people that have their own antiques or have inherited from grandma, and they want to know what's its value, or know the history of it, or it's something they think may have a lot of value when they bought it at a garage sale for $5.
So we have professional appraisers come down, and we invite people to come in and contribute to the museum and present their items to be appraised by...
And they actually get a appraisal of whatever it is they brought. We bring in experts from jewelry and porcelain and decorative arts and fine arts and Asian arts. And
it's a great event. It really
it's a nice community event. People came from quite a distance.
And I believe that this is in the fall sometime?
The late fall. We've done it the last 2.
August or something like that. One of them was. Is it around the same time each time? Or, and you have that once a year?
The August, September one, we've done it for the last 2 years or 3 years on it, and we're not sure we're going to do it this year, but we may do a partial one along with an Author's Day. We try to do a large community event each year, and then of course in 2012 we did the city centennial. We hosted the entire centennial celebration for the city.
Wow.
Up to 8,000 people each day.
So your exhibiting room that you rotate, what's coming up? What's the next one?
The next one coming up is historical photographs, or historical photographs of history in the entire Bay Area on it. And it will be combined with artifacts. And this particular artist, Gabriel Ibarra, he's quite well known. He's exhibited in other art galleries around here. And say he exhibits a photograph of apricots drying out in through the orchards. We would actually mount that on an original drying rack. So it's a combination of artifacts, our own artifacts
very
with the
cleverly
photographs.
done. We have such people like Laura and others who are able to drag stuff out of our warehouse and present it in a way that just is electrifying. It's really well done.
And wide range of topics.
Yeah. Telephones, we had old telephone numbers.
Telephone arrives to Sunnyvale. We did that
now
one.
you like volunteers. We're getting a little short, and I want to talk about the volunteers a bit. So if people would like to volunteer, what kind of activities can they choose from? It's not just one thing. What could they do?
No, we ask them to just come and shadow us for an entire day that we're open. But it's being a docent, it's helping out in the gift shop. Some of them do data entry. Some people love to do research. One person does nothing but scan our old historical photos when we get requests for copies of that.
We have people who run the school program.
School
The
program.
school and even the gift shop, right?
And the gift
Yes.
shop.
They could even do that.
Yep.
So lots of different varieties that people can choose from.
Some people only want to come and serve tea twice a year, and that's fine. We definitely need volunteers for that as well. But it's a 100% volunteer organization from me all the way down.
Wow. Well, it's just a really nice thing that you're doing. I really enjoyed my visit there, and I really want to thank you for being here today and being a part of sharing people out there that do not know about this museum. So a little bit more I'd like to say that the museum is open on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. The hours are 12 to 4. The admission is free, but of course donations are very much appreciated. And if you'd like to know the directions and the location and all of that, you can find out the details by checking the website. So thanks for watching the show, and watch again.